This is your time as utility customers to get your questions answered. And we'll, like I said previously, we'll go a little bit into what this customer support and transition model looks like. All right, so we're just going to, start high level, again, reiterate why BEETS first, and then we'll get into training and expectations. And then Adam will start talking about the system a little bit more in depth, and then we'll get in there and start looking at how to get applications into BEETS. There are a couple methods there, and we will talk through that. Then we'll hopefully have a little fun with a knowledge check before we go into break. And then after break, we will be going into a little bit deeper what the application terminology is, how to get things into programs via manual entry. You're going to learn all about this, how to find applications in the system, and then we'll close out with another knowledge check, and then we'll talk about next steps. Okay, Adam, I'm going to pass it over to you.
So, why BEETS? We are currently in the process of sunsetting, like we call it, our current solution, IS 2.0, which we've been using for 12 years. It was originally intended to be a stopgap solution after we had canceled one of our prior attempts at this project of creating a new tracking and reporting system. It was meant to last a year or two. We've stretched it out for 12 years, but it is at its end of life. The hardware it sits on, the software it uses is all out of support. And we needed to move on, and we knew we needed to move on to a better solution that worked for both Bonneville and our utility customers. We went through a rigorous process to select a BEETS vendor. We went out to find something in the commercial space, so it's not something custom built for BPA. And you'll learn today what are the different things and how it works. And we wanted to make sure that the solution was going to be a better experience for our utility customers and our users at Bonneville. So we went out and looked for something that was going to allow us to build in our business rules that check the things that utilities report to us, making sure you know what is necessary to report a type of measure or project to us. So the system is doing verification checks. It performs workflows to move that information to the various people at Bonneville who need to review it as part of our compliance process. That whole process should help streamline the review, the submission and review process, so that we're not bouncing things back and forth on your IS2O invoices and canceling them so you can fix one little tiny thing. We'll be able to do that all in the system, and the system will help avoid that experience you have today. It also needed to be something that was self-service. So as our customers, you'll be able to go into BEETS at any time, at any cadence, and report to Bonneville and work on your projects and measures that you've submitted to us. We also have a need for ensuring you can visually see what your reported activity to Bonneville is looking like in regards to budget, expenditures, how much you spent with Bonneville, also being able to track all those projects and measures in the system, and ultimately you'll be able to see the resulting capture of energy savings that we will track in the system. We also wanted to keep an existing business rule, which is essentially you can invoice whenever you want, and that is true with the BEETS system. It is at your convenience, at your pace, at your cadence of when you want to submit things into the system and then request payment from Bonneville. And lastly, kind of reiterates all of these bullet points, is we wanted to make sure this was centralized. So all the data that you are submitting in the system is the same data that Bonneville has. We're all looking at the same information. And so that is all used throughout the process, from when you originally submit something to Bonneville, to how you're requesting a payment to Bonneville, to how you're getting your performance payments. All the data you've submitted is connected. And that may sound kind of weird, but when we look at our system today from our purview, it starts with Excel spreadsheets, and then it goes into IS2O. Later on, it goes into a reporting database. It all is more disconnected, and BEETS is really centralized and helps us keep our data aligned so that we know we're looking at the same thing you're looking at. Now I think we're going to chat a little bit about what success we've had with BEETS so far. So we've been running with BEETS almost a month now with a group of utilities that volunteered to be our kind of guinea pigs. This is real reporting, real dollars. We've had 22 utilities using the system across 7 different programs. We'll define programs for you later in this briefing. And so and we've had over 1,000 applications, and again, application, another definition you'll become familiar with, but that's referring to projects and measures that have been reported to Bonneville. We've already approved 988 of those, so a good portion of them, we've already processed them through our compliance reviews, and we've got roughly over $1.4 million in projected EI payments that are in the system today. At the bottom of the slide, we've noted we've paid over $1 million out of the new system. So it is working. There's real dollars flowing. We've got almost 7 million kWh energy savings inside the system right now, and utilities have earned over $100,000 in earned performance payments using our new performance payment concept that I think we've introduced it at other sessions. And I think with that, Jen's going to talk a little bit more about training expectations for today.
Yes, okay. I am going to endeavor to take people off mute. I guess I shouldn't, or I want to welcome you all to take yourselves off mute if you do have questions during this. Definitely want this to be an interactive session today. Okay, so Charlie, I will first answer your question. Why are we training today if we don't have logins to get into the system? Now, as I mentioned, we have been through these trainings. I was trying to get a count with Melissa today. We've probably done about 20 to 25 different training sessions trying different things out. And BEETS is a very powerful tool. However, it is challenging in the beginning to orient yourself and move through the system quickly. So, the thought of, having large groups of utilities trying to walk you all through it in the system, we felt that it wasn't a great use of your time, and we could supplement that with some other support resources that we're going to get into in a little bit. So today, your expectation is not to take notes on everything we show you today. Asking you, do not panic. There's a lot on the screen. We fully expect that you will not even remember about half of what we discussed today. Do not try to understand what everything does in the system. And I know this seems kind of negative to start on this, but we want to give you all the freedom to take this time to listen and observe. Your job today is to get used to the terms. Get used to the terms, the layout of the system, what the system does. Feel free to ask questions, and obviously, trust the process. You will learn this, and we've been through this process with other utilities before. This is very thoughtful that we're doing it with this approach. So, I completely understand your concerns, Charlie, about not being able to walk through with it. But your job today is just to get that base foundational knowledge, and then we will have lots of opportunities to give you more hands-on support. And it will be in a more one-on-one manner, which is going to be more helpful for you all. So, one thing I just want to do a little plug, not having guides ahead of time. We will give you this sort of mapping to the reference materials that will walk you through step by step all of the things we're going to cover today. So this will be something you can revisit at a later time. I'm showing you where in the navigation guides you can find all this, so you will have an opportunity to sort of reflect on what was shown today in an individual manner. So this sort of details out, we've shared this at the roundtable, so this is likely not new to any of you. But where we are is in this instructor-led virtual training session. This is facilitated, and again, goal today is to provide you with base foundational knowledge of terms and capabilities of BEETS. Now, getting that more hands-on in-system support will happen after go live, and this is where we will start these drop-in office hours. So day one of Go Live, we will be on hand to walk individuals through their early reporting. Additionally, the ears are, they're participating today. They've gone through extensive training themselves. They will be on hand to also provide more one-on-one support as you walk through those initial submittals. So, like I said, today it's about that foundational knowledge, but this is the in-system practice that you will get, and it will be as part of your initial reporting. Also mentioned, these step-by-step training guides and videos. These will be available, and we've already started to post them on bpa.gov. So you're welcome to sort of see these whenever, and I will give a little plug and show you some of those materials in a minute. Okay, so here's the list, and this is more for your inventory to know it's there. But I'll show you where in the system you can find all these. We will continue to build these out up till Go Live. So we are on the BEETS site on bpa.gov. Here will be where you'll come to actually do, to interact with the system. We have the application reporting through here, and we'll talk about that term in a second. BEETS reports portal, budget allocation request submittal. These are sort of the links to the system. And then I'm assuming most of you found these, or at least the sign-ups, details about upcoming trainings. But these training materials are going to be here. So in here, we have some videos starting to be populated. We have this BEETS navigation guide. And this is very much your step-by-step, here's what you do. And as I mentioned, we gave you the reference of what parts are covered. This is extensive, but our customers so far have found this very helpful in helping to navigate through the system. So just a little plug that these resources are here. Also reports portal training guide. So we have, to reiterate, this navigation guide is going to be sort of this BEETS 101. We have this invoicing and performance payment guide. This will be the things that are covered in Module 2, and also individual program workflows. So how do these different programs sort of flow through the system? So there's sort of some mapping here to help you get an idea of where you are in the processes. And then last but not least, we will cover this in Module 2, the BEETS Reports Portal Training Guide. So there are plenty of resources for you to sort of get that step-by-step personal training, but then also we have supplemental hands-on support. So I'm going to pause for a second and just make sure that people are comfortable, or if you have any questions with the training approach we're taking, you're welcome to share at this time. Okay, well, we will keep moving. All right, now we are going to get in the system. Adam, I think you're doing this section.
Okay, all right, so full disclosure, we changed this section up a little bit since yesterday. We're going to try a bit of more slides before we get into jumping into the system. So look, and maybe some feedback if this is helpful. So let's start with some terms that we've already kind of teased out and maybe already used and will be used kind of throughout our presentation. These are things we'll probably all get familiar with in a couple of years and forget all about IS2O, but it's kind of helpful to understand what we're referring to. So going through this list, I'll try to define them, and then we'll relate to them as we show you the system in a bit. So the top one, the application, is something you're going to hear us refer to a lot today. This is simply what we're calling in the system as a reported measure, like a UES measure is becomes an application, reported of an application, or a project. So a custom project is an application in itself. So equate that to calculators today. A lighting calculator is now becoming an application when it enters into BEETS. A UES, when you report them by bulk, which we'll talk about as well, each line item is an application. So that just refers to the details that we've asked you to report in regards to, in the implementation manual, if you want to report this measure, this is the information you need. That constitutes an application. And inside BEETS, the second term that we'll get familiar with, and then maybe a harder one to adjust to, is the term equipment. Inside the system, which again is a commercial system, we use the term equipment refers to the measure. So this is where your measure or ref node is going to be used in the system. The next term that we'll show you when we do the demo is something called a form. So this is essentially a place where your data is going onto a form. It looks like almost like a Word document. It has captured data elements that are required for the reporting process onto a form. The next term, which is probably familiar because we use invoices today, in BEETS, this again is invoices referring to the request for reimbursement. And in the case if you're self-funding, you still invoice self-funded items as well. But this is just a separate step in the BEETS system than it has been with the IS2O system. So it's important to understand when we say invoice, we're referring to the point in which you're actually saying, okay, I'm requesting funding from Bonneville, which in BEETS world, this happens after BPA has already reviewed your submission for compliance. So it's kind of a two-step process, which we've introduced, I think, at other forums as well. But just note, when we say invoice, we're not referring to an application, we're referring to the actual invoice, which is a request for payment for items that Bonneville's already approved for you. The next term, program, this I like to equate to our kind of Excel terminology you have today. If you're going to go and report a particular type of project or measure, you pick up a certain Excel template. Inside BEETS, we have these broken out as programs. And this is where we've programmed, sorry, using the term twice here, the different reporting requirements, the calculations, and the various business rules in the implementation manual for the different types of measures. So UES constitutes a program in the system, and the custom projects are a program in the system. The next one, premise. In our old world, this is what we would have called the site address. So inside the BEETS system, we refer to the premise as the site where the measure was installed, or where the facility where a project was located. The next term you'll hear us use is something called a widget, and it kind of sounds a little bit fun, but it's when we show you the dashboard as you log into the system, it kind of gives you information that's most relevant to you. We'll talk more about that, but each little piece of the dashboard we often will refer to as a widget. So this widget will show you this information, another widget will show you different information. And the last thing, which we'll have some questions on in our fun portion of today, the workflow. So workflow is how the system sequences the review process of an application. So the various tasks that need to be performed in order to submit an application to Bonneville is using the workflow. And this helps provide guidance of what is needed from each user in the system. So if it's a big project like a custom project, you've got lots of people involved. There's customer service engineers, there's COTRs, there's utility users. All those people have workflow tasks to perform to complete the reporting process of those projects in the system. So we'll show you what workflow looks like, and we'll have some questions about workflow for you to help answer later on. Okay. So we wanted to kind of show you a visual of what we're doing with the system before we hop into it. So bear with me, it's the new charts, we're trying them out. So overall, the BEETS system is now more comprehensive than what we have with our existing process using Excel files and customer portal and IS2O and EE docs. It's all this stuff is being combined into one system now. So we start on the left where you're the customer, utility, are submitting applications to Bonneville. And the system is going to be checking that data as it's submitted to us, making sure all the requirements that we've had the system programmed to check to make sure we're getting as much information that we've requested from you right up front. That way there's less back and forth between us and you and say, I know the system has helped me ensure I gave Bonneville all the required information they need. That then, if it passes the validation checks, it goes into the BPA review process. So that's where we're conducting our compliance review. Has what you reported to us met all our requirements of the IM? We're reviewing and then approving those applications in the system. And after we've approved that application for compliance, it becomes available for you to request payment for it. And that is the invoicing process, which is going to be another training module offered on a different date. So we're not going to cover invoicing today, but we'll talk about the first few portions of this process today. And then ultimately, just as today, after the invoice is processed through Bonneville's financial systems, you get paid. At the bottom of the chart, we're just highlighting that also another training module we'll be covering is the data from the BEETS system is actually being replicated into a reporting portal, which allows you to go and we have some reports built out for you that you can run at your leisure at any time to get data that you might want to use for various internal needs analysis or reconciliation. The BEETS report portal gets a copy of that data at night and allows you to run these reports and get a bunch of information out of the system for your use. Okay, so I guess I kind of jumped ahead.
Yeah.
Today we're covering again these three portions of the process, and we'll cover invoicing and reporting at a later date.
Okay.
Okay, so before we hop in, again, this is kind of a terminology thing. Once you hop into the system, I get a tendency to want to talk about everything there. So we're highlighting here kind of the general navigation of when you land in the system. So at the top of it, I'm going to talk about application processing, dashboards, and utility and program management real briefly here. These are the main tabs of the application. So the dashboards is where you're going to land. I talked about the widgets. So this is going to have details about your budget and your savings information. It's going to show you status and details of those invoices as they process through the financial system at Bonneville. And then this is also a place where for certain programs, again, programs like UES, will have a tool or a widget that allows you to upload an Excel file containing bulk data. So we'll talk through that. Melissa's got a good demo for you of that. We've not gotten rid of all of our Excel tools. We still have some in place, and the dashboard is the place where you will be able to load certain program data via bulk process. The next section is the application processing. So this is where you're going to be able to see your applications as they flow through the process. And this is kind of where your work is done. So later in today, I'll be talking to you about what a portion of the application processing section, which is called the Work Center. And the Work Center is kind of where you go to find applications that are waiting for you to work on. And then the next section, utility and program management. This is just how the data is structured in the system. So we have, obviously, Bonneville will have a lot of utility customers, so it's broken down by utility. And then under each utility are those programs that we defined on the prior slide. So UES program, custom program, those are all detailed in here. And it's just a different way the applications are organized inside the system. So you can drill in via program. If you want to say, I want to see everything in my UES program, you can do that through that section. And then in the upper hand of the screen, there's a couple tools that you'll become familiar with, one being the global navigation search. This is your Google search tool for looking things across the system, and we'll talk more about like how to use that. And there's certain data elements in the system that are really useful to use for the search. And then the last thing we're pointing to in here is this little cogwheel, as we call it. This is how you customize your view once inside the system. In this particular screen, this is where you would go to add these dashboard widgets. And so the first time you set up the system, you go through the cogwheel to set up which dashboards you want to display on your page. And you have some options there. And you'll see these cogwheels throughout the system. They let you personalize your pages. Change colors, change what you see. Gives you experience, so you can craft it the way that information is best kind of read from your purview.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. So next we're going to be jumping in the system, but before we do so, just want to pause for a second. Does anybody have any immediate questions? You can have plenty of time later when we get in there, but I'm going to give you the opportunity. Okay, all right, Melissa.
Yeah, actually I think there's a slide to show, a couple slides.
Yes, you are correct.
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to talk a little bit about, expand on some of the things that Adam talked about, specifically around the application entry process. So Adam mentioned, sorry, Jen, can you go back? There we go, perfect. So Adam had mentioned that there's two, pretty much a couple ways to enter applications in BEETS. You've got bulk entry via those Excel sheets like a UES template we're going to take a look at, and say non-residential lighting as example. So I'm going to talk about that, the various programs and which ones are bulk versus manually entered. And then we're going to actually look at the UES template, which is a tool you all should be familiar with, but we've made changes to it, so we want to walk through that with you. Then real quick, I'm going to do a demo in the system, get in there and show you how you would add the bulk uploader and use it. And then just a little bit about the timing before we wrap up this section. All right, so Adam mentioned in his definition section around the glossary that there are programs. And depending on which type of program you're reporting in is how it will get in the system. So you've got the bulk upload programs, as you can see at the top, UES measures, non-res lighting. For option 2 customers, they use the bulk upload feature. If you have anything that's non-reportable, you would bulk upload it, and then BPA has a BPA managed program that's just for us. The rest of those programs listed there, from your option 1 custom projects to your SEM or small compressed air, those are all going to be done inside the system in a manual entry form. And Nathan is going to talk a little bit later about C1 and show us a little bit of that. So we just wanted, before we talk a little bit more and jump into the system, to kind of show you, these are the programs that you're going to use the tools of uploading bulk for. All right, Jen, I will go ahead and share the template. All right, here we go. Okay, can you see my screen? Can I just thumbs up that folks can see it? Okay, great. Thank you both. Adam and Jen just popped up at the exact same time with their thumbs up. All right, so this probably looks a little bit familiar if you've looked at the UES template and the instructions. There are, in this version, 5 tabs. Instructions, which we'll be talking a little bit about, but you've got lots of detail here on the how and some important tips. Then you've got the input tab, which we'll talk about in a minute. An error check that you can do before uploading. We've made this template a bit smarter to help you along. A UES measure list, which you should be familiar with having in the system. And then a BEETS upload tab, which is basically a place where you can just check and see what the data is looking like, because sometimes you'll notice if there's an issue, you'll see it on that upload tab. But the rest, the input and the error check, is likely where you're going to be the majority of the time. So for the input tab, this should look pretty familiar, but there's some unique changes. We've got a spot to put your email address up at the top in case there's any issues with the upload, we can reach out to you. And then also you select your utility name here. So there's a drop-down list with all of our customers in there. And you want to make sure your utility is selected so the system can pick it up and put it in the right place. Now, here along the top, these look familiar. We've got project name, which, in previous UES templates was called container name and was kind of a wild card field you could use. This is now a required field, and you'll see the benefit of it when you are using the system, because it helps as each of these line items become an application in BEETS. It's helpful to group them together with this project name. So, for example, I might call it something like August 2022. So when it's uploaded into the system, I'll be able to find it. And you'll see more about that later as Adam walks through the Work Center a little bit and shows you where you could find things. You could also, some customers get really specific here as well. So maybe they might even match the unique site ID there to the project name. But it's up to you as long as it's something that helps you to find it in the system. So next is EEI percentage. Previously, you would select EEI or self-funded. And if that's what you want to do from now on, you could just put 100% for EEI percentage, fully EEI funded. You could put 0 for self-funded, or say you want to do 50%. You could do that here. So now you are able to partially fund UES measures, which is not something you could do in the past. And then I just wanted to note that as you click along the top, boxes pop up with more detail to help you along. So I think that's a beneficial aspect of the new template. You can see as we go along, this yellow box tells you what each column and field is for. These ones in the middle should look familiar to current day. And then now we've got some of our newer fields. So manufacturer and model is required for residential ductless heat pumps and advanced smart thermostats. The commercial measures it applies to are in the IM. It's a little bit spread out through there, so we didn't want to make this an entire book up here. So check the IM for commercial measures that it applies to. And then the installed cost, this is only for residential ductless heat pumps and some of those commercial measures. But in the residential space, it is not needed, for example, not for smart thermostats. You don't need this column, just these two. And then the final column that has been added is something called primary heating system type. And this applies to a select list of weatherization measures only. So for your PTCS heat pumps or your ductless heat pumps, you're not required to fill this in. It is simply for those, any electric, insulation, windows, and prescriptive duct seal. So again, this is here in the template for you to reference. And then we've got the fields that have been here before. There is a wildcard field still available for your use, and then some calculator fields for those measures that have a calculator. One really great thing is this reference here. In case you forgot, this will give you the list of required fields by RefNo. So let's go over here and I'll show you how that check works. I'm going to go ahead and add in a ductless heat pump. And select one. I'm going to go ahead and put 100% EEI funded. Now, if you come over to that section, you can see here that the tool in the template has shown us these are the fields you're going to need to make sure you've filled in. And you'll see that, say you did a heat pump water heater, that only requires the fields up to column G. So if I was to put in a heat pump water heater, obviously some of these fields would apply. But you can come over here and there's not going to be anything there because there aren't any other fields beyond for columns H through Y that are needed for that RefNo. So it can be a very helpful tool to seeing what you need in each column. Now the second feature we built in for validation is an error check. So this tab you can click on and you'll see wherever data is missing. So completion date, as you saw, I only filled in a few of these fields, but you can see where you're missing something. It will give you a count at the top that tells you, hey, you got to go find these places and fill this in. And this way, you can kind of run through and do a quick error check, similar to how you would use the summarizer today, but this is more about what data applies to each RefNo. In addition, there is a column, say you forgot a number or a letter in a RefNo, it would note an invalid RefNo here, as well as the primary heating system type and some of these other fields that might have some invalid terms. You can just kind of look at this. It's all clear. I'm good for that submission. So hopefully this allows you to upload to BEETS, and this is showing what will actually go into BEETS for those submissions. You would feel pretty confident that what you got on your template is ready to upload. So speaking of that, Before I jump into the systems, does anybody have any questions on this template? I believe it has been added to the BEETS website. Is that correct, Jen?
Yes, it was just added yesterday.
Okay, great. So you guys can go and find it. Of course, this is just for BEETS. We don't want it uploaded to IS2, but I doubt anybody was going to try to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Melissa, just
questions?
one more thing about this template. You know, it's like we've built in all these error checks, but it's also important to note that the system will also perform those. So the goal of, you know, doing
Correct.
this validation is purely to make your life easier, because it's much easier to correct an application in this template than it is in BEETS. So if you use these tools and validation resources, you should have a very smooth process getting these applications into the system. Okay, we do have a question, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unique site ID is not needed for all applications. What is the purpose of the start of last rate period on the top?
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah,
so unique site ID, that it is true if you were to review through the IM, there are measures such as ductless heat pumps, your PTCS measures. There are a lot of measures where unique site ID is required. But say, for example, you're doing a EV charger. That's not a measure that requires unique site ID. Now, also, feel free. You can put any and all of this information in on any of the measures that you would like to have this documentation of measure information in the system. But what's required from BPA, there is a limited set that does not require unique site ID, which would be in the implementation manual. As for the data up here, so, go ahead, Adam. Did you have?
I was going to add real quick, just a good practice. So we prefer not to have non-sensitive PII in the system as well as data.
Yes.
So we'd prefer if you didn't put a unique site ID as John Smith and then his address. That would be something we're not desiring you do with the freedom to put the information in the system.
Correct, yeah. So as we've done in the past, that would be maybe their account number or whatever unique number that you would usually use. And then, for residential, and I believe it's in here, never collected for residential measures. So do not include personally identified information. So we did add that here. It's just on in a different part of the template. Thanks for reminding us on that, Adam, though. So the start of last rate period is in there because, as you may know, you're allowed to report measures as far back as the start of the previous rate period. So anything that was achieved in your service territory that you hadn't yet reported, we will update that at the beginning of the next rate period to be the start of this rate period. But it's just a reference tool for you to know, hey, how far back can I report? Because we often get questions about that. You know, am I able to report this? It was completed in December 2019. Well, yes, until the end of this rate period, you still can report that. So that's what that's there for information. All right, so I'm going to jump in to BEETS, and we're going to look at the always fun to have everybody watch. Put in my password. That was my login. Super quick. And so as Adam had shown in his slides, this is the dashboard where we start out. And your budget and savings are noted here, which we'll talk about a lot more in Module 2. But you'll be able to see your EEI budget, your performance payment that you've earned, how that's being spent and processed through the system, through the application pipeline. In addition, we've got that global search that was noted up here. The cog wheels for setup for things like color, can change what your color is. I prefer nature. And a couple of other things that are unique to your profile. Again, there's that cog wheel we'll look at in a moment to set up the bulk upload dashboard. And as Adam had noted, application processing as one tab and utility and program management as another, which each of these will be touched on a little bit later in the training. But let's go ahead and add a bulk uploader to our dashboard. We talked about that UES template, which you would bulk upload once you've had completed, but you'll do a one-time setup of the bulk uploader to your dashboard. So you click on that cogwheel there, configure dashboards. You do add a dashboard. You can call it bulk uploader. And this is also in the navigation guide as well, and there's a video. So we've got lots of options to watch this later as needed. Say add widget. You would select your application bulk uploader here and call it what you like. And then at the bottom, excuse me, my little pictures there, is a save button. And that will put it on your dashboard. Now you'll note that it kind of went to the front spot here, and that can be changed by using the configure dashboards to put the main dashboard back at the top, and you can pin it there. So I always want that main dashboard to be the first thing that I see when I come into BEETS. But maybe you'd want the bulk uploader as your first thing, so you can set that up. But here it is. So the bulk uploader is super simple. You select your utility, so then in the system we know that that matches what you put in your template and it ends up in the right place. I'm going to select Bonneville Expedition, which is our testing utility. You then would select the program. As Adam describes, these are the names of programs from, if you were doing a lighting calculator, that would go in non-residential lighting. I've got UES measures here, so I would select that, browse through your computer and grab the file. By the way, this file doesn't need a special name to get into the system, but you may want to name it something that you're going to remember later in case we need to reference it, or you want to make sure you don't duplicate your submissions. You're like, oh yeah, I uploaded that one already. So here's the file. Then you just click upload. And you'll want to wait and make sure that you see this nice check mark here. And then say you did that upload and you want to go upload a lighting calculator. You can click here and do another bulk application upload. It'll take you right back. So each non-residential lighting calculator has to be uploaded individually. And then those UES templates would each be uploaded. Maybe you do yours once a month. You could come in here and do it once a week if you'd like, if you had a week's worth of measures that you wanted to add to the system, because this is the part where they're doing compliance review, not the actual invoicing step that we'll talk about in Module 2. But yeah, that's how we go through uploading in the system. And I believe I'm going to take a brief slide here to talk about the timing for once you've uploaded, when it will get in the system. Okay, so once you've clicked that into the system, depending on what time of day it is, it gets into a queue to be pushed into the system at a certain time and loaded into BEETS. So you can see these times here. If it was put in the system before 8:50 a.m., it's going to get pushed into BEETS and checked on all those things that Adam mentioned, all those system checks around 9 o'clock. And the same thing almost every 3 hours until later in the day. And this is for UES, for utilities that do C2 or non-reportable. So when you do those bulk uploads. Now the non-residential lighting calculators, as you know, those are pretty hefty Excel files, and they take a little bit longer to process. So regardless of when you upload a non-res lighting calculator, it will take a couple business days to show up in the system, and you will receive an email when it has been loaded in there. So we just wanted to note, a lot of times folks might come in, we've noticed with our soft launch utilities, they load something and they're wondering, they don't see it in the system, and they just want to know, oh, well, maybe I loaded it at 9:40. Well, if you loaded it at 9:40, it won't show up there until after 12. And so before you go ahead and try to re-upload something because you think maybe you didn't do it right, just give us a call. Just say, hey, you know what, it's been, what you said was maybe a cycle and it's not there. Do you think there's something going wrong, because we can check and our systems team can check and make sure if there was an issue with the upload, which we've found with our soft launch utilities, it's been going pretty well. These files have been getting in just fine. But sometimes if there's a lot of traffic in the system from other users outside of BPA and our customers, it may be a little bit backed up. And so, you know, you may see it 1 or 2 cycles, but most of the time it's going to make it in that next cycle. All right, I think that's the section that I had to cover regarding bulk uploading.
Yeah. Melissa, just, you know, one more thing about,
Sure.
you know, the timing of this. You know, we highly recommend, Melissa said it, we highly recommend that if you have a question, if your upload got into the system, you're not seeing it, that you contact us rather than upload a second application or a second template. What happens is it creates duplicates in the system. You get a bunch of things you have to fix, and it's not a pleasant experience. So we are here to quickly address those questions. And it's also important to note that our systems team at BPA does get notified if there are any issues with the upload. So we will reach out to you if there were any problems that were identified. So it's pretty safe assumption that your upload will get in there if you saw that green confirmation screen, or you'll find out from us if not. So we're going to go into, you know, like Melissa just uploaded applications into the system. The bulk uploader has put the data in there. So how do we actually find those applications after the fact and potentially correct any revisions that are needed? So we'll go into that now. Can you go to the next slide? And I just want to sort of hone in here. We are going to be looking at these first 2 steps in the process where BEETS performs that validation check on the data that came in. Okay, I will take over, Melissa. And luckily, I can access Vision outside of BPA's firewall, so we should be able to do this. Okay, so, you know, this is a login. It's called Vision DSM, as I think Melissa had stated before. It's sort of the off-the-shelf software that BEETS has custom development and configuration on. So I'm going to log in here. And lots of things going on. Okay, so as you can see, mine looks pretty similar. And I have different colors than Melissa does. And going to see that Nathan later has also customized his. So to recap, Melissa went in here, she uploaded her application in here, and we have waited those 2-3 hours that it's needed. And which I can't show the notification now, there was an issue with one of the applications that came in. There was some missing data. So I will now find that application, and I'm going to do a little bit of behind the scenes. We're going to get into Work Center in a second. But in the application, you will get a unique project number. So you will be able to copy and paste this easily in the future. So please just forgive this little sidebar. We'll get into this. Thank you, Melissa. She's my savior today. Okay, let's go back one step. I come in here. I received a notification via email that I have an issue with one of my applications and I need to correct it to move forward. So it will give me the application number, and I'm going to use this keyword search in the upper right-hand corner. And the easiest way to access individual applications, so remember we're talking measures or projects, is to use this unique ID and put it in this keyword search. So pretty simple. So this number that I have pulled from that email, I am going to find this application. And hover is sort of a big thing in BEETS. You know, if you're trying to do something or learn to navigate, when you hover over is when you start seeing some additional functionality come up. Now, for every application number, you're going to get 2 results. And the reason is BEETS looks across all parts of the application. So you can see there's sort of this application form section that'll show you in a second. It also shows up in the application header. So that's why 2 come up. It doesn't matter which one you select, but you hover over here to open it. And this is the application page. So this is where you go to find out information, to perform tasks, to move things forward. These individual line items, if you do UES, will show up each of these as an application. Now, should everything go through, there is no missing data, you will see a status called compliance review here, and you will have no tasks to complete. This one that we selected individually has some revisions required. So you'll see some tasks here. And these are things you need to fix or correct in order to move it forward to compliance review. So I'm just gonna, take a minute, and we're gonna look at what's on this application page. This is something that it's very overwhelming to customers. Like, we have seen it over and over. There's a lot going on here. So I'm going to focus you in on the few areas of this page that you need to know in order to complete your part of the process. So, try not to get distracted by all the buttons and functionality here. Let's focus in on the things you actually need to know. So up here, application number. Like I said, this is the system identified unique ID, the best way to locate that particular measure. So there's a nice little copy application to clipboard. You don't even need to do Control C here, little tip there. And then you will see the status up top, revisions required. So this revisions required is always an action. The utility, or if you're in sort of custom projects and you're having ESIPs or CSEs working on this, this is a utility activity always across all programs. This means you need to do something. It has some times about when it was updated. If you actually manually entered this application, you will see who did it here. But this one came in via bulk upload, so in notes imported in system. Project name. Dan, I'm using one of the examples we were practicing with earlier, so I had named it via Lobos for our ear practice on 10/17. As you saw in the template, you can put anything in here that you want to, but we recommend that you do something sort of identifiable so you know which one this is referring to. And when we get into Work Center in a little bit, you will see even more why that's important. App ID, ignore it. It's also system generated, but this is the one we recommend using across the board. It's just more functionality, so ignore this one. Pretty straightforward here. Utility, this is our test utility that we use, the program. Now, this ref ID area is interesting. This has some good information for all of you. This application, this first 002, indicates that this is the second line item on the UES template. The first line item has a 1. The third has a 3. So it will give this sort of reference point for you if you want to know which application this refers to on the template. Second, these should look kind of familiar. This is the measure ref number for this application. So it auto-populates it here so you can see right away which one it's referring to. Third bit, this is the completion date that you inputted. And lastly, in military time, this is the date and time that it was uploaded. So there's some important information in here. It's not required to process things, but we want to call this out so you have this additional reference point and just know what's up here. we're going to ignore most of this. You know, it has like print, application, some copy things that you really won't use much. The only thing I might want to note is this bookmark here. This allows you from that home screen to sort of highlight this application in particular for easy access. Not required to process, just another little tip. All right, we're moving down. Tags. This is auto-populated with any errors you may have. So if there were no issues with the application, this would be blank. But hey, we are in revisions required, so this is telling us we have something to do, and hey, guess what? We did not provide the manufacturer, which is required for this measure. So this is just a little insight into what's going on in your application. Then we're moving down to workflow. This is very important and where you perform all activities within the processing of BEETS. So this is where your tasks are done. This is where you sort of see what needs to be completed, who's required to do it, etc. So asking you all to ignore this little thing on the left. This is likely too much information for all of you. It has a lot of system information that is not helpful to customers. So feel free to ignore this on the left. And then we're moving down to the workflow sort of landing area here. And again, it's telling you what is the workflow status that this is in. You'll see some tasks here. Now, there's a lot. This doesn't mean you have 34 tasks to do. This is inclusive of automatic tasks that the system is completing. So it's less helpful to end users. So you can ignore this too. But what you really need to focus on is what you have down here. And there's two things here. These tasks can vary depending on what information is required. Sometimes you may see instructions for correcting that will tell you how to correct it in the system, but this is a pretty straightforward one. So I know I need to do something, so I'm going to click on it, and you hover and click on the blue for this pop-up. And I'm looking down, and the asterisks are noting where fields are required, and I'm trying to find the one that is not completed. And as the tag indicated up here, hey, my manufacturer is missing. So very simply, I just provide in manufacturer there, not boogers there, and I click save. And the system will close this. And you always want to wait for a green confirmation here. Melissa always says, take a sip of coffee. It is running a bunch of validation checks behind the scenes to make sure you did what you needed to do. And guess what? I got to confirm all project revisions complete. And always in BEETS, there is one last confirmation step that is you're requested to do. You know, it feels kind of redundant, and is definitely a, are you really sure you want to move this forward to compliance review? Gives you an opportunity to pause. But hey, I did what I needed to do. I am ready for this to go to the COTR. So I certify that I did it. I submit. And again, it's running through all of these validations behind the scenes. So it can take a minute. Just trust it that it will move forward. And of course, it's being very slow this morning. I'm going to do what Adam tells me not to do and try it one more time. Okay, I got the red because I wasn't patient enough. But hey, I did what I needed to do. And this is a little bit misleading.
That was a great demo, Jen, of being impatient.
Yes. Yes, I know. I mean, I'm showing you the bad behavior, and the system will let you know by giving you red notifications. Okay, so hey, look, this has moved forward to the compliance review. So the COTRs are now working on this. It is in their queue. So this is a little bit misleading, but this is an example of what your screen should look like if you have no more tasks to complete. So with the COTR, from a utilities perspective, it's moving along. This is also, as I mentioned before, this is what you will see on this application should you have no issues with the template in particular. So each of those individual line items, if you provided all of the required data, if you checked your error check, which will get you to this point very easily, all of those uploads should move forward to compliance review right away. So there is an opportunity for these to move very quickly to the COTRs to begin their review. And we have seen this with the soft launch. They are moving through them very quickly, which is great to see. I'm going to pause for a second in workflow, and then we're going to go into just a few key areas of where you find application data. Does anybody have any immediate questions? Okay, well, let's keep going. So after the fact, you know, you're thinking about, well, where is all of that data that I loaded into the system? And there's a few key areas that it appears. So all of the stuff that you put into the template has a few landing places in here. Forms is going to be critical. This is where 95% of your data will land. So we call this form, like, kind of look to the left. This is always sort of the input point, that initial input point, and what you entered with the original application. So, you know, as we see, like, hey, project name, that was the first column in that template. What you inputted for EI percentage, your completion date, you know, all of those sort of columns in the Excel spreadsheet are now in here. So that's going to be where a majority of the information is. The second one, with these UES in particular, is the funding determination. And what this is, it will take from import fields, remember that EEI percentage that you inputted and the measure you inputted. Hey, here are your savings, your eligible performance payments, so you have information on that accessible. So this may be helpful just to have visibility what's related to this particular measure. The third place that information from your UES template goes is equipment. And this is one of the confusing, probably the most confusing term in BEETS. Equipment equals measure at all times. You can use them interchangeably. So when you see equipment, think measure. As you can see, this is the measure ref note here. And if you want to find information about what is in this measure, hover. You know, that's always like a very common practice to hover over to get actions taken. And you just go to this edit. And here is where, you know, measure name, all of the characteristics of that measure are loaded here, as well as the savings and payments associated with it. So if you want more information of what you loaded on that line item, you can go to this screen. So just to recap, the information you loaded into the UES template goes into UES import fields, funding determination, and equipment. So those three places are really going to be a majority of what you interact with in the system. Now, forms also. So BEETS has this cool feature of pinning to the sidebar. You know, I'm going to recommend that people do that. As you see, it goes in and out. It's a lot easier to interact with these forms than over here, I find, than sort of navigating through all these. But not only do forms hold the information you inputted, they also hold the information that other people interacting and processing this application put into the system. So this is a workflow. We're doing handoffs between different players, and you all have access to the same data. So, moving along, like BPA compliance review, when it goes through compliance review, you will see the approval comments and information here. If it's selected for oversight, they complete the form here. If you need to do a QC tech review, information goes here. So the forms just sort of get populated as it moves along in the process. So if you're looking for information, check out the forms area. Just some other headers that we want to call out. Notes, Nathan's going to show you a little later a really good use of this. These are shared across anybody that has access to the application so that they can see it. Here's a really good example about this. We talked about equipment. Equipment equals measure. Documents, if you need to upload documents, particularly for like custom projects, you will do so here, and Nathan will walk through that also. Payments. Right now there's nothing here because we are still processing, but once the invoice starts being created, this moves to ready to invoice status, these will start being populated. We'll go into this in more detail in the invoice and performance payments module. Adam had a good point. Oversight documents would go in here. And then contacts. We don't recommend that you sort of modify contacts in here. Your contact information is in the forms also in most cases, but just so you have a reference point. This is the utility information, and this is the premise. And if you remember that term, this is where that measure was installed. So lots of information here, but just to give you a sense of the landscape, these up here are going to help you sort of find different parts of the application. You will become very familiar with it. But I do have to say, if you come out of today with anything, just understand workflow is where you complete the tasks and do your work. Okay, I think that's it for my section. I'm going to hand it over to Nathan. So, in this example, we did sort of a bulk upload example. He's going to take us through what it would look like if we have a custom project, option 1.
All right. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, so just to sort of hover in here, again, we're going to show a similar deal as what we saw before, but in this case, it'll be around a manual entry, so nothing coming in through an Excel sheet. This will be all done in BEETS. And we just want to highlight that, and I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so I am in BEETS. And I just want to show you where this manual entry will begin, and then I'll show you kind of where it lands and your roles. So in order to start a new application in BEETS, we have this sort of create new application flow. So we'll go to application processing. I will find my utility, which is our test utility in this case. Select my program. Remember, we talked about these programs. This is sort of where we'll find C1 in programs, and then we'll start here. And now this will be done mostly by your customer service engineer. So you may not encounter this, but this is just good for you to know how to actually start a project in a new application in BEETS. So your CSE will fill this out, this project information, much like if you're familiar with the C1 calculator. This project information form here is exactly the same as that first tab in your C1 calculator. So they will fill all this information out and then scroll all the way down, a lot of information to fill out, and create a new application. And so once they do that, it'll take you to the exact same thing as Jen showed before. The CSE will have some tasks, and then you will have some tasks to do in the workflow, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So when a new application is created, you will get an email that looks something like this. A new custom project has been started in BEETS, and this is just letting you know that it's been started and you're welcome to view it. Yeah, sorry. A CS is a customer service engineer. So typically with BPA or our partner in industrial, ESI, an ESIP, as they're sometimes known, they're typically the ones that are filling these out, but in some cases, yeah, a utility person may actually be filling these out. So if that is the case for your utility, certainly let us know, and we can help you out with this in more depth. But so this is what you would receive. This is just to let you know that it has been started. You're welcome to look at it, but know that the engineer has some tasks to complete before it's your turn. You'll know it's your turn when you receive another email that says it's ready for your submission. So this is going to be what you're looking for. You're going to see this email, and what we can do is just copy this project number, kind of as Jen showed before. Just go up to the magnifying glass here. We're going to paste that right in there. Search for that project. Let it take a second. And again, here it shows up in 2 places. Don't worry about this. This is just telling us that it's found that project number in a couple of spots. It's all in the same application. And you'll see when I move back and forth, there's this little thing that's moving with me. That's, again, that hover operation. So when you hover over something, oftentimes something is revealed in order for you to do something. So I'm going to click on that to open this application. And there we go. So just like what we saw before, it's the exact same screen. Just know that this was done manually. And so now you can kind of feel like you're in the same spot as before, get used to this workflow. This workflow screen is sort of your home screen, what you'll come back to. As Jen mentioned, I have a notes pinned. You can pin things to the sidebar, so I pin my notes just in case the engineer or somebody has a note for me. I can immediately see it, and in this case, yeah, my CSE told me that I need to upload some cost documentations in the proposal folder in the Documents tab. So I'll get to that in just a second. But first, I want to check and make sure that this is the project that I was expecting to be ready for submission. So I'm going to just go into Forms, as Jen mentioned. This is where all the information is. Since this is in the proposal stage, these are kind of where I'm looking, is on the proposal side. So I'll check the project information form, just kind of review that the CSE, or if it's me or somebody else, that I put in the information correctly, and just review all the fields. If not, if I see something that's wrong, I can edit it here and add in a field and resave it. So, if this is the wrong rate or something as simple as that, you're welcome to do that really quickly. Similarly, in the project proposal form, just read through it to make sure that this is indeed all filled out correctly. And then I'll kind of return to the workflow and go to my home again. Okay, maybe I take this documents task right now. So let's go to documents, and they need cost documentation. Okay, I didn't provide them that yet. That's fine. I'll do that right now. So I can upload a file. I can browse. And then here are my cost estimates. Put that in the proposal folder. This is a supporting documentation, document, and then public view. These are just going to be for all access, public viewing, so anybody can see these. And there it is. There it has shown up. Again, the nice thing, if you have a PDF, you can actually view it right in the system. So I see that this is a PDF. Again, that hover feature. Hover reveals all these things I can do. I can open it, download it, or view it. Let's just view it to make sure it's the right one that I uploaded. And yeah, that looks like the right one. So immediately you can see it, just take care of it. You don't have to download it and view it if it's a PDF. So that's kind of a neat feature. And then one more thing I want to check before going through the workflow is just to make sure that the measure looks right. So this measure was added by the engineer. So there are two ways to look at it. You can look at it this way. You can look at it through this edit button. You don't have to edit it. You can just look, make sure that indeed, yes, this is the measure that I wanted. Site savings look right. Some more things to view there. Cancel that. Or you can do this one, compare equipment. This is another way to view your equipment or your measure. This is kind of nice because it takes out certain values that don't have any value yet. So in the proposal stage, we don't have a lot of these actual fields populated yet. So this is mostly fields that are populated, and so it's a very quick view. You'll kind of figure out what you like to view better as you get used to the system. So a lot of ways to do a similar thing. All right, I'm feeling good. I feel like I know the system pretty well, or the project pretty well. I'm going to go into my workflow. So just as Jen showed, the biggest thing with workflow is we want to click on the task in order to perform it. And I'm going to read through this. So this is asking me to review the funding information. And if I wish to make any changes, I can by editing the form. And then once I've reviewed that, I will come back to this task and submit. So let's go up to the forms, proposal funding, 100% EEI. I could edit this if I so choose. I'm going to say no, 100% sounds good. That's what I discussed, and that'll work at least for this proposal stage. You can always change it in the completion stage if you decide to. So I've reviewed that. I've come back to the workflow. This task is still open for me. I've done it. I certify that I've done this task, and I submit. So now I'll wait for the next thing to do. All right, so now this is going to say, make sure that your utility assigned project ID has been populated correctly. So if this was blank, you could fill it in. You can edit this if this is not the correct value. In this case, it's the correct value as far as I can tell. So I'm going to save it and say, let's move on to the next task. Again, here's unique site ID. I clicked on the task to review what I had to do with it. It's the same deal. If it's not populated, it'd be blank and you'd have to fill it in. You can also edit this. You know what, this was actually -1. So I edited that. I'm going to save it. And that will now be updated in the form. And then my final task here. So complete this task to submit this application for BPA review. So note that this and all the tasks that you've seen before, I just want to point this out, has been assigned to utility group. So that means it's assigned solely to you, the utility, to complete these tasks. You may see other tasks that are assigned to a number of people, including other, engineers and the utility group. That means anybody in that group can perform this task. But this task in particular, and the ones you've seen before, when it's your turn to submit, are assigned only to you. So only you have the power to submit an application into BPA review, so tech review and then compliance review. So,
hey Nathan, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the scenario where we have the ESIPs as an assigned to group, the utilities, will I, as a utility, get notifications for those tasks, even though the ESI reps will complete them?
So the only notification you'll get is that a project has started. So that's just to let you know that it's been started. It's not telling you to do anything in the project. The only time you will get a notification when you actually have to perform tasks is when the tasks are solely yours. So only when your tasks are available and left. So that in that case of this application is ready for utility submission. That meant that the CSEs had completed all their tasks, and it's only left to you to submit.
Mm-hmm. So use the emails to sort of drive the work that you need to do.
Exactly. Yes. Or reach out to your CSE or EAR if you're confused at all at who has to do what. In these early stages, you're going to see a lot of tasks probably, and so it's good to just double check to make sure. But know that when they're assigned only to you, when you only see your name, those are your tasks to take. When you only see a utility group, those are your tasks to take. Okay, so this is just a reminder just to make sure you've checked everything before it goes in, because once you complete this task, it's much like submitting it into BPA through EE Docs, for example. It's out of your hands and into the BPA review hands, so you can't make any changes after you've performed this task. So it's just to make sure you're happy with everything and ready to go. So I've reviewed everything. I certify that this task is complete, and I'm going to hit submit. Hopefully mine's moving a little faster than Jen's. Yes, a little faster. And there you go. So now, just as what you saw before, I have no more tasks to take. The status has changed. Now we're in proposal technical review. So that means the BPA QC review in this case, because it's a commercial project. We'll take a look at it. It'll move on to compliance review, and then go into awaiting completion. So since this is just a proposal report. This is kind of neat. You can always check back into here to see what status it is in. So when the technical review is complete, you can always check back and see what status it's in if you're concerned about where it is in the process. So again, I just wanted to reiterate, check your forms as Jen showed before. This is where all your information lies, just like in the C1 calculator. The project proposal tab, project information tab, that all has been copied exactly into here. So it's that same information, just in forms now. Equipment, use this edit button or compare equipment to view the measure information and estimated site savings and costs. Documents, you can view PDFs just by looking at them with this hover feature with the eye, or if you feel like it in the split view. So this is nice if you want to do a side-by-side comparison. And you can download Excel files if you wish to double check anything there. I think that's everything I have. Are there any questions about this? All right. If not,
all right. Thank you, Nathan.
To Adam. Thank you.
Yeah, and just one last thing about the workflows. We will have, unfortunately, you can't see who's working the different workflow statuses in system, but we will have some references for you. You will get very familiar to what each of them mean, though, very quickly. All right, Adam, I think you have this section. Are you on mute, Adam? No.
Hello.
There he is.
I am here, sorry. I was getting myself organized here. Okay, I was going to do a recap of a couple things before I jump into the system to give you a context. So we saw how Melissa had used an Excel bulk upload templates, very familiar to how you've done UES in the past, and that was submitted into the system, and then those applications were created via automation. And then Nathan walked you through the other programs where you're manually creating an application, and that workflow is providing you the instructions of what you need to do in order to, essentially report that project or measure in those programs. So we've created these applications two different ways. In a sense, we are using the workflow as we demonstrated to show you what actions are needed. So in the case of UES, it could have been, we got your data, but something was wrong with it, please fix it. Or in the case of a custom project, it was, okay, what steps do I need to do to properly complete this project? The next feature we're going to show you here is the Work Center, which I spoke to earlier on as being one of the main components of the system. And Nathan, or it was Jen who pointed out you're going to get emails from the system instructing you how, you need to work on this application or something's waiting on you, and she used the global search to find that application. That's one way you can go to navigate to a specific application email. Or say you've gotten, through the week you've been busy, you got like 5 emails of different projects that require your attention, and you don't necessarily intend to go in and search for each one. There is this Work Center, which is a way you can look across the system at your applications, whether they are nested in the different programs. You'll be able to view them here across programs. The other neat thing about the Work Center is you can set it up to filter based on certain statuses. So as certain statuses require your attention as a utility user, you can actually build a filter that says, I just want to see applications that are waiting on me to do something. I know I got these emails, but I'm going to go in and just show me all 5 apps I need to work on today. I'll go in at a certain time during the week and go fix all those, and then I'll go back to my regular work. So the Work Center is kind of that concept to be able to say, oh, log in the system and figure out what I need to do today. So this Work Center is set up with what we call filters, and they're relatively easy to create. In our case, again, we work across utilities, but I'll set one up for our test utility. And the idea is you can pick a single program and set up in your filter, and you'll be able to add multiple programs if that's what you'd like to do. I'll show you an example of that. So here I've selected the UES measure program, and you saw Jen had pointed out, well, there's this revisions required. That's one particular status that requires your attention in that program. There's a couple others. I'll pick another one. For example, it says compliance review revisions required. Okay. EPA chose to use revisions required across the system when it's necessary for the utility to address. So that's a pretty common way to find things. So I'm just going to pick those 2 statuses and say, okay, I want to add this to my filter. So I'm going to create that one. I'm going to just, let's name it today, Expedition UES. Actually, I'll call it Program Application Needing My Attention. Do a little bit different than I did yesterday. So I've created this filter. You can also go back and edit the filter. So you see here it's open, kind of pick a different ones I've got created here. In this case, I just created this one. I can go back and edit it. So say I want to say, okay, not only do I want UES measures, I could go and do the same setup for a different program. So I could add in my custom programs as well. So you have the option to do that. I won't go through the details, but you can keep building out this filter, and eventually you could capture all the statuses that are requiring your attention, and you have a single filter that gives you an idea of all the work you need to have, didn't need to work on. I'll just stick with the UES program for now. So I've got this filter, and then there's different settings you can play with, but generally we set it up and we say, show me any applications that are set up based on this filter I've selected up here. Hit show results, and it's going to give you a list of applications. In this case, again, I've set up a filter just in the UES program with 2 statuses. So what you'll find in the system, again, is when you get a way to see all of your applications, there's a couple different spots you can see these things. Again, the cogwheel lets you determine, I don't really want to see all these columns. They aren't that helpful to me, or I have a preference. I'd like to see this one first, it allows you to set it up. And the additional feature that the Work Center has, as well as the program management section where you can dig into a program, is you're able to search. So if I was looking for something specific, like Jen used the global search to look for an application number, you can also use it in these white bars at the top of these displays. So for example, say I was looking for in here advanced, I was looking for a bunch of advanced thermostats that I submitted because I know I forgot to do something, or I messed up my, I know I goofed up a bunch of these, so I'm going to look for just everything I put in the project name advanced. It allows you to search, and the way you search in Vision is if you're looking for something that you don't know the full name of it, you just know a portion of it, you use asterisks to identify, well, there could be something before advanced or there could be something after advanced, but I know I need advanced to show up. And that's the way you can search through your Work Center and other views in the system if you're looking to filter down a list. But in this case, say I'm in the system and I want to know, I got to figure out how many applications I need to work on. Well, it looks like I've got 193 applications waiting on me in our test utility to go work on. So you've set up your filters. You can now click through these applications and begin working through them. As Melissa and Nathan showed you, you can complete your workflow. Different terminology. Work Center is where you can find a group of applications that you're searching for or need to work on, or however you want to set it up. And then workflow is, again, the actions needed to work on those applications. So there's lots of different uses for the Work Center. In this case, I've set it up so I want to have a landing page spot or filter that shows me, all right, I know I'm logging in every 2 weeks or once a month, and I'm going to go in, I'm going to fix all my stuff I need to fix or move projects along that are waiting on me. It's whatever your cadence is, but you could set it up that way. Alternatively, if you just say, I just want to see everything across all my programs, this is a way you can do that as well. You could build a filter that just says, show me, any status for my program. You can select them all. I just want to see all my applications in custom one, and then I want to add all my applications for another program. You can build it out that way. In the system, the applications are structured under the program, so you can drill down through this area of the system to get to a specific program. But if you wanted to look across programs at all your applications, you would use the Work Center. In addition, I think one last bit I wanted to cover is we've kind of reinforced a bit on the project name is something you set in your template for UES, and you'll set your project name for your manual applications as well. This is a good way to really narrow down and kind of get smart on how you want to be able to find things in the system, is using the project name. In addition, the ref IDs that the system is creating for your bulk load, we walked you through that, how those get established and how you can relate that back to your upload template. You can search those things in here. You can find things quickly. And lastly, again, that project number that's going to come via email sometimes saying, hey, this project requires revisions. Again, searching for that, as Jen showed you, is another place for some key elements of the application that help you find things. So as you begin to use the system, I think you'll pick up your preferences and how you like to look at things, and you'll be able to set the system up and configure it the way that works best for you. Any questions about this Work Center? I know we're covering a lot of content today and lots of different concepts. We're trying to bring it together for you. It is a hands-on, as we talked about at the beginning. Once you get in, we want to work with you, walk you through each of these elements so that they're set up for your use when you begin using the system. Today was conceptually, we want to introduce things to you.
Yeah, and I don't want to stump on any questions, so please keep those coming. I will have a sort of setup checklist for you, so kind of instructions to get that initial setup done, so you don't need to think about it again or learn how to do it over and over. Okay, any last questions? And I know you will have more in the future. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what's next? Module 2. So this is where we'll cover the parts of the process detailed here. So when the customer, you, go in and approve payments, otherwise known as invoices in BEETS, and we'll talk about the BPA issuance of payments. And we'll also cover sort of dashboards and reports. So how do you see all this data as it's updated through the process? So it will be a much less thick content than this one. I know that you were shown a lot of stuff today. It's a lot to digest. I would actually say this is the easier part of the process, so it's a little bit shorter in time and hopefully a little bit easier for you to follow along. All right, next slide, please, Melissa. Okay, so now you have until tomorrow to complete any IS 2.0 reporting that you want to do. This is not a requirement. You are welcome to report in BEETS. It's working. But if there are any last things you really want to get into IS 2.0 and you can't meet this timeline, contact your EAR if you have any concerns. We do want to work with you through this process. You should also, if you haven't done already, sign up for Module 2. It looked like everybody on this invite had signed up for both sessions, so thank you for sort of understanding the concept here. And then keep an eye out in the weekly announcements. This is the primary channel we'll use to communicate with customers on upcoming things that are sent out, as well as you can also, keep in contact with your EAR. They will highlight key things you need to know, but just letting you know this is the channel we'll be using. So after go live, I know Charles is interested in this, as he said before. You can get your username from your EAR on 11/16. We do need the user access forms completed and returned in order to get those usernames set up. So please, if you haven't returned them already, do so as soon as possible. It's a little bit more of a process to get the user set up than we had hoped. So it's not something we can do very quickly. So please get them in ASAP. Shop-in office hours will start the day of go live, and they will run until 1:31, except for some holiday dates. We will try to focus the content or the discussion around different programs on different days. This doesn't mean that you can't hop in with a question any day, but we will be doing like more walkthroughs in these areas as noted. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll be focusing on bulk upload programs listed there, as well as any invoicing and reporting. Thursday, Friday, we'll be doing the manual entry, so we'll make sure we have some of the engineering team on, some ESETs. So just content-wise, we'll be focused in these areas. And this is really an opportunity for you to come in and complete your applications with support, as well as the EAR support you will get. So reach out to your EARs, and then here's the link to the BEETS site. We'll get you this content after the fact so you have access to everything. But otherwise, that's it for today. Ending a little bit early, even though I know this is a very long training session. Thank you for sticking with us. I really appreciate your time. Are there any last questions or concerns that anyone wants to raise? Okay, we have a quiet group today, but you know who to go to with any questions. I do want to state we do have these modules running over and over and over. It will be very similar content, so if you want to see it again, you're welcome to join, but just want to make sure you all understand we doing the same thing over and over for a bunch of utilities over the next few months. All right, thanks everyone.